Hi, my name is Selena, and I just wanted to chat with you guys about what I've been reading lately and just some topics that have been on my mind, kind of about the book that I've been reading. And the book is by Paolo Baccagayupi, and I'll put his name down at the bottom, and it is called The Windup Girl. And this is the cover, and it is a story about the future, and the very near future. And there's a character named Anderson Lake, and he is referred to as a calorie man. And so in this near future, um, it has gone through, the world has gone through many plights, um, akin to like the potato famine in Ireland. So the world has pretty much lost many of its food stocks, and people are starving. And so now calories are the new currency, pretty much. So there are companies that specialize in genetic altered food, and that's what they do. They try to re-engineer foods based on tiny strands that they find um, in in archives or what have you, and they re-engineer foods for people to eat. But because the food isn't grown naturally, but is now made in like plants and whatnot, it is man-made food, and it is more easily controlled. So these calorie men are like the big business type people, and they kind of rule the world. Anyway, the story takes place though in Thailand, where these various plights haven't got rid of all of the food that naturally grows in Thailand, and there is a bit of xenophobic feel in Thailand. They don't want foreigners. They fear the foreigners. They fear the plights. They fear takeovers. They just don't want things to come in that will disrupt their livelihood and whatnot. So um, in Thailand, though, Anderson, like our main character, has infiltrated their society, I should say, and he is kind of like acting as a spy for his genetic alteration company. So then that's just one story, though. This book seems to have many threads running through it that all kind of work together, but um, I feel like Paolo Baccagayupi's previous writing experience as a short story writer is very evident in this book, because each of the characters that we are introduced to seem to have stories all their own. Like I feel like I can pull each of their characters out and their storylines out, and it could be its own short story. So you have the story of Anderson Lake, and then you have the story of Emiko. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the character's name right, but she's the wind-up girl, and I'll get to her history a little bit later. And then there is the white shirt, Jane D, and then there is the Chinese refugee who works under Anderson Lake, and they all have a storyline that it's interwoven, interconnected, but yet all their own, and they have their own style. So the story is written in third person, but each chapter you kind of get just into that world, and the third person omniscient narrator is focusing mainly on one of those characters. So the other main character in this story is Emiko, and she is the wind-up girl who the book is named after. And what a wind-up girl there are a whole slew of wind-ups, but what a wind-up is a non-human generated being. So they make wind-ups for work, they make wind-ups for war, and they make wind-ups for pleasure. And she was a wind-up made for pleasure in Japan. And that's where wind-ups kind of have had the best life, was in Japan. But she is kind of like a lost wind-up. She was stranded in Thailand, where, again, where the xenophobic feel, they dislike anything other than what is natural to Thailand. So she's badly mistreated. She is a prostitute, and she is pretty much a slave to her owner, and so there's a large part of the story that's dedicated to her and her plight, being a wind-up in this culture that doesn't value her. One fear that she has is that she's going to be diced up for parts, and because again she's not human, but she's kind of like a genetic being. So being in this world, this this future world, genetic mutations and alterations and whatnot is something that is pretty prevalent. So she fears that people would chop her up for her genetic parts. But yeah, I'm loving this story. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful read. Paolo Baccagayupi writes just a great story, and the pacing is pretty good. I mean, at first it was kind of slow, but now it's starting to pick up. There is one scene in particular that I'm reminded of is when Anderson was looking at some archived books about what they called, I believe they called it the Gilded Age, or the Enhanced Age. I have to get back to you guys on that. But that's the age that we currently live in, because this is a post oil world. They no longer have the natural resources that we use for energy. Everything is based on calorie now. But he was looking at archived books, and he saw this one vendor with this huge mountain of food product, and he was just talking about how he looks at these books and he just sees the waste and the things that we took for that we take for granted, namely the food that we have available to us. And when I was reading that, it just touched me, especially coming up to Thanksgiving and thinking about being thankful and everything. I remember reading that and just being, yeah, I'm no longer gonna take that for granted, just because there may be a time where what I have is not available to others, and I never want to be accused of being ungrateful. So it was just, and that's the type of writing that you have in this book. It's very rich and thought-provoking, and I feel like, when you read something that's meaningful, I feel like I'm reading something that's meaningful. But this, because of these reasons, I'm finding it very difficult to get through this book very quickly. I had wanted to finish this book by the end of November. I don't think that's going to happen. So I am going to say that this is going to be one of those books that's going to take me a while to read. And I am currently like in the middle of the book so far. So I'm halfway through, and I started in early November, and now we're getting toward the end. And yeah, so I'm not saying that apologetically. I'm just saying that this book is worth reading, but for me it's a slow read, but it's worthwhile. But yeah, so Paolo Baccagayupi, The Windup Girl, is what I'm currently reading, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who likes adult fiction, adult literature, anyone who is into science fiction, and anyone who's interested in environmental discussions. This book is rife with conversations about the environment, and yeah, so I think this is a worthwhile book. It did win the Hugo and New Bella Award. Awards are usually given for books in the science fiction genre, and I believe this was his first completed novel, but he has written other novels since then, and he has written 2 YA novels. If you're interested in reading something that maybe is a little bit less deep or less heavy, I would try one of his YA books. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, just talking a little bit about the book. So if you have any questions or comments about The Windup Girl, if you want to know more, just leave a comment down below. And yeah, bye!